I love Shay's little recaps. He's been going through all the events for you guys to give us a breakdown of what's been happening across the season. And I think right now we are here in Turin. And I have my wonderful co-caster, Alex. My name is Mike, and we're going to be going through the next round shortly. We do have a bit of time, though, beforehand. So I want us to go a bit down memory lane and talk about some of the events this year. Where do you think we should go?
Yeah, it's an opportunity now to just kind of reflect back a little. Let's go back to one of our, I think it was our second event. I think it was the first one was covered already a little bit earlier. Let's take a look back at Stuttgart Regionals, where we had this current meta breakdown of all the points that was able to successfully earn points there. Of course, a different format. We, of course, always seem to see a bit of Mew at the bottom there, but
there's always a bit of Mew going on. Since Mew came out, it's always been hanging about. But Lugia V-Star, during its era, when it first came out, it was so dominant. You can see it there. And, I mean, this was very much a three-deck format, wasn't it? It was Lugia, Mew, and Lost Box. And then, as we heard in the Charlotte event, there started to be some other decks coming through, like the Gudras and the Duraludons. But at this stage, it was quite early on, so focused purely around Lugia, Mew, and Lost Box.
Yeah, but as it rounded up, of course, that Lost Box is there as the third largest. Palkia was on its way out, or so people had thought. It was one of the best decks in the format for such a long time. But if we think back to actually the final results, it was a Palkia deck which was able to take the whole tournament. A Palkia with that little extra spice of the Vikavolt by one of our top players this tournament. I believe he's even currently 7-0. From the last round.
Yeah, Mateusz, one of the Polish players. We spoke a little bit about it when we were talking about Warsaw, and that Polish deck, the Palkia Vikavolt deck, the combination there that did so well, drawing through Speed, Lightning Energy, through the Greninja, through Melanie. It was just draw, 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 and the consistency of the Palkia and the disruption of the Vikavolt worked beautifully. So Mateusz got a big win there, and at the time, it was, I don't want to say it was a surprise, but it wasn't one of our regular top players. He beat Steph, was it that wasn't the Stefan Ivanov, that was Brent Kuzmans in the final. And so the fact that he was able to take down that tournament with an unusual deck as a bit of an unknown player, and to hear him now doing so well here at the Turin special event, he's currently 7-0, and he's on the top table against the Liverpool winner.
Yeah, let's have a little look back at Liverpool regionals as well. Of course, once again, we have our metric dominated by Lugia Archeops, just because the inherent power they had during its reign before sort of that rotational period, because it could utilize all of those special attackers using the kind of different Aurora energies and so on. Mew, once again, sitting nicely and pretty at the bottom, but again was joined closely by, as we already seen, Lost Box, but also their Arceus there on the left-hand side.
And this is where we start to see some people trying to be creative around the Lugia meta, trying to find new decks to bring in. And that Gudra, that little three deck Gudra there, was actually the winning deck, well, the finalist deck. Stefan Ivanov coming in. It was, in terms of the decks to come away from this event and copy, I think everyone went away and was like, actually, Gudra's quite a good deck. And we started to see it increase in numbers all across the format afterwards. So Stefan really putting a name out there for Gudra.
But also on a 7-0 record, who was actually facing our Stuttgart Regionals champion, was our Liverpool champion as well. We saw him a little bit earlier for a quick spontaneous interview. I believe it was O'Shea, Leon Kessering, who was able to pilot that Mew DTE deck, I believe, to the champion status, taking down Liverpool Regionals, again showcasing just how good he is at the game, being 7-0 alongside Mateusz in Turin now. I believe round 8, of course, now is finished, and we're looking forward to round 9 soon, so we'll find out exactly what happened in due course, but both players are locked in to our day 2 because they're far beyond the 19-point threshold now.
And I think it's fair to say for both Mateusz and Leon, they were players that were good, but they weren't regional winning players at the time. They weren't the kind of players you'd see regularly going into top cuts. And now they're in that position where off the back of winning, they must be so motivated to go on and perform a lot more. And I remember speaking to both of them after their wins, and they were, they're very motivated, having to rebook flights because they hadn't planned to make it to the final. The classic story of, oh, now I have to pay for a new flight because I've won the event. Because these players don't expect to make it that far. and now they're motivated. They're on those top tables and making themselves known players amongst the top.
100%. Those prizes going a long way, I think, to kind of supporting our players there as well. But again, like you mentioned, they're showcasing their longevity to be able to continue to play the newer decks into the new metas and still be at the top of their game. So this has just kind of elevated them into this position. I'm sure both players, you know, having those 200 points from the championship, regional wins as well, also pushing them into sort of really good positions into the actual championship point table, as it were, because, you know, a lot of these players may potentially be going for top 22. I mean, 200 is pretty much their invite already. It'll be a shock to hear if they weren't already in with a day one invite in Yokohama later this year. But it's just fantastic to see. You know, I think Leon's actually only his second real season as a master. He was obviously just aged up just a bit before COVID. Or sort of the COVID period, I should say. And it's been fantastic to see him just kind of just prove himself in the Masters division as well.
Yeah, and this is the great thing here in Europe. We have so many different groups of players from all the different areas. And I think when you go to the locals who've played against these guys, they'll know they're amazing. So Mateus, amongst all the Polish players, was one of their best, and they knew he was going to do well. But then when you go on the international scene, you only really talk about the big names, the Pedros, the Tords, the Stefans. And those guys take a lot of the limelight away from these top 3, top 5 players from their own region. And that's where I'm sure we're going to see a lot of Italian players here in Turin.
Yeah.
We've already just seen one on the last game. So, you know, Kim representing Italy, one of the top players from Italy. These guys will know who their strong players are. And a lot of the new players will be coming through and maybe having a great run at one of their first special events in Turin. So hopefully we'll get to see some of these stories of Italian superstars who are coming through, and this is the first event they've been able to get to, and maybe going into day 2.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's great to see those kind of communities as well. I know how passionate the Italian community is, how passionate the Polish community is, because obviously we had that regionals in Warsaw as well.
Let's not forget the Finnish.
Yeah, well, I was about to highlight that as well. The Polish have been doing very well this season. The Finnish players have been doing incredibly well this season, and they come full force for every time one of their friends, family are in the finals. They're there cheering them on, and it's such a great sort of ambiance to be in that kind of area. We're just hearing that they're supporting their friends all the way through to the final and sometimes to the win, as we saw in Regionals Malmo with Lasse also taking it down with the Mew deck as well. But, you know, it's just incredible. I'm kind of hoping we do get a lot of Italians also making it into day 2, get an opportunity to showcase their capabilities. Like you've already mentioned, many rounds already, we've shown a number of them, and, you know, Kim's one of the more also higher profile ones at the same time. But what we'll just quickly show you right now to give you guys a bit more insight as we progress through the seasons and the chance to look back again, it's just that sort of meta progression chart that we've had the chance to discuss a little bit.
How things have shifted. We mentioned Mew there a few times, and Mew being that blue line, and you can see it through the middle. It did go down a little bit when Lugia first came out, as people were thinking it's not going to be a good deck. And as time's gone on, people realize Mew is always good. It's always consistent. It's one of the most reliable decks in the format right now, with the Fusion Strike system allowing you to draw so many cards, and the access to draw and the access to the search in the deck allows it to pull off its game plan every time. It does have to worry a little bit about things like Drapion and the other dark type attackers, but we've seen it being probably the most popular deck in Scarlet and Violet. And that's saying a lot because it's been around since its release.
Yeah, definitely. I think this helps to show a real sort of cycle of our meta. Of course, we have that dominating period for Lugia V-Star sort of in that middle section there from sort of Stuttgart onwards for quite some time. It obviously has seen a drop because of the rotation, but it has to innovate and be a single strike build. But what you tend to see here as well, because Lost Box is also a deck which kind of hovered and at a regular pace in terms of percentages around in tournaments. But then you've also got things like that Arceus, which has little spikes here and there once the meta's kind of shifted in a particular way. We saw, as we kind of mentioned in one of our games or rounds earlier, Arceus sort of came back in again with 2 big regional victories sort of across the world, I'd like to say. I think one was maybe Singapore and one was in North America. And then more recently, Mew suddenly come to the fore again.
Yeah, and what we saw in that graphic there as well is there's some decks that when they come out, they make a massive splash and then they disappear for a bit. And I think it's those decks that you've got to watch out for. I think Palkia is one where when it came out, amazing, was the most strong deck in the format, working well with Inteleon, but it kind of started to fall down, and we might see it come back in the future with Paldea Evolve coming out soon. So you've always got to keep an eye on those powerful cards, because if they find the right tools to work with, they always have a chance to come back, and we will probably be seeing the same thing with Lugia too.
Oh, 100%. I mean, at the moment, we've seen how strong it is, even without all of those special energies, giving that kind of multicolor attackers that are in the deck. So it has to utilize a single strike. And despite having so many things taken away from it, it's still, at the top of its game. If you can flip the right, I was going to say heads, but it's not always heads. Sometimes you want to flip those tails. You want to flip the right, die roll. And then you can just keep rolling your way to victory with Lugia, in all honesty.
I mean, it takes a very confident player to put Capturing Aroma in your deck and say, well, I'm going to flip the right way whenever I need it. But the way it's built is it allows it to flip either way. If it needs to get a basic or an evolution Pokemon, it can always find the right combination when it needs to. But sometimes coin flips can go against you. I mean, Mew VMAX, currently the most popular deck in the format, has a lot of coin flips with those chromatics that can be vital. But ultimately, play the deck for consistency. Typically, coin flip cards are some of the most powerful cards in the format. And if you flip heads, they are broken.
Yep.
But then that's why every other time we do see those come through a little bit more fairly, especially things like Crushing Hammer. I'm glad we haven't seen those in a little while.
Yeah, I've played a lot of flippy cards in my time. I've played Crushing Hammer, I've played Roller Skates, which was a flip card to allow you to draw 3 more cards. Super Scoop Up, which is fantastic in decks such as allowing you to utilize Shaman EX to draw cards on a regular basis. It has so much power if you just hit the heads, and even if you don't, it's a card that sort of allows you to thin your hand, thin your deck, to maybe draw some more cards. Generally, the insta-playable flip cards, again, we're talking about kind of level of power and sort of utility, really sort of come to shine in those moments.
Now, I'd love to hear you talk about how powerful cards are, but I know you guys want to know when the next game is going to start. Round 9 will be starting shortly. We're just going to get those players onto the stage for you and make sure that they get all set up. But we are getting to our final round of the day. We had some technical difficulties earlier. For those of you who've just come in towards the end of the stream and were wondering where we went, there was a power outage. The game's carried on, so we didn't affect the competition at all. Thankfully, cards do not require any power, just a human shuffling and everything going on. But that did mean that we had a few rounds go by when we were away. But we are now into round 9, and this is that key stage. How many points do these guys need to make day 2?
Yeah, it's 19 points that they'll have to make it and reach in day 1 in out of their 9 rounds. So remember, you get 3 points for a win. A tie is 1 point, unfortunately 0 for a loss. But just being able to go that 19-point threshold and above it, if you want to kind of continue pushing for a better placement for day 2, that's what a lot of our sort of higher placed players will be looking for. But it's nothing to be sort of, just unhappy about if you're just at the 19-point stage. We've seen many players just sort of creep in to the day 2 players contingent and then push themselves up into the top 8 and potentially even take the tournament down. But 19 points is what they need to get. We're going to be bringing, hopefully, a matchup which allows us to showcase 2 players on that kind of winning-in scenario, both players vying for that spot into a day 2 berth, and then also take down either the special event as a champion, or maybe they just in need for some additional points towards their World's Invite as well. But we do have our players beginning to start to set up now. We have them sat down, they're just shuffling up, and we'll get to them shortly as well.
Yeah, those CPs so key here at the special event. Looking to get one of the final opportunities for many of these players to get their World's Invite. 250 points here in Europe. Some of them will be able to go out to things like NAIC or local events. But we will be going into round 9 here as you see the players on stage here. And I actually think I recognize that player on the left. We're speaking about Polish players. I think that's my boy who I got to meet out in Warsaw. I think his name was Antek.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, yes. So I wonder what deck he's cooked up, because he used to think up some very creative decks.
Yeah, just as we're pulling the details for you, as we do have the decks there, just on the screen for you viewers at home. I've also had the chance to play Christian Sanataro as well at the London Open. He's playing Gardevoir EX up against Antec's Mew VMAX deck, and we do see some of the achievements here from Christian. A top 32 placement in the most recent London Worlds Championship.
Yeah, I mean, look at some of those results. Top 4s, top 8s, regular top cuts. I mean, anything that's making day 2 regularly and also then consequently going on to those top 32, top 16, you know it's 1, maybe 2 games away playing against some of the best players. So really up there with the best of the best. And I think it's also fair to say that that Warsaw finish, quite a recent event, so very familiar with the current meta, with Lost Box being the key deck back then. I think we saw he was going to be playing Lost Box here, so very familiar with the Lost Engine. And the thing I like about Alex, I know he did quite well at Warsaw as well, and he was one of those players playing the Palkia Vikavolt back then. So one of the innovative players using those newer decks. And the thing about those Polish players is they've got a few of them who are great at creating decks and some of them who are great at playing the decks. And if I remember correctly, I can't remember which way round it was. I believe Alex was the player who would execute the decks best. So he would be the ones who would be able to find a way to use those decks clever way. But yeah, we see mulligans here for both players. So we're going to reshuffle up here. But Mew VMAX, solid pick.
Yeah, we've seen it a few times already on stream. And I've scouted the field. I've seen quite a lot of players also pick up the deck. Again, sort of relying on that inherent power that the deck has for its draw ability, as well as the damage output that the deck has, and then the disruption factors that have been included into the deck nowadays. It's just something which has, again, allowed it to still keep up with the meta, despite having so many different cards that will impact it, like the Drapion V that sort of came out, as well as Path to the Peak is also a card which we initially didn't expect to be playing in Mew, but at the same time was something that would slow down a Mew player just because it would stop the draw power that it inherently has from Fusion Strike system.
Yeah, and Alex, he's one of these Polish players who's traveled around a fair bit. The Polish scene definitely came out of in force this season with Warsaw being their first regional. I think a lot of them started taking it a lot more seriously. So Piotr Oliński doing well.
Polish player,
yeah, he did very well at Malmo, getting top 4 there. And I think I saw him earlier today in the hall, so he'll be playing here too. I don't know if he's going to be making day 2. So the Polish player is very strong. And we'll see this next mulligan here. Will Alex get a basic? There is a basic there, so we'll see 1 mulligan, I think, for Christian.
Yeah, it looks like we're finally getting to our game now, as both players finally do have a basic to kick the game off. As we do see the prizes come down. That's the research and a dark energy.
Hang on a minute.
We're about as surprised as you guys are.
Let's have a look and see what's going on there. I don't think he's playing Mew VMAX. I think we have the wrong... They had the wrong deck list here. So we have an Arceus build. This is what I wanted to see from Alex. I told you he was innovative with his deck making, and this is what we wanted to see. I'm a huge fan of this. For those of you who do not know, I was trying to build a Dark-type Arceus deck not too recently, and I'm interested to see how Alex has decided to build it. This is going to be fantastic to watch.
Yeah, so here we do have an Arceus built deck with a Galarian Moltres, a single prize attacker that has that Malevolent Charge ability. When you play it down from your hand, you can attach up to 2 Dark Energies to this Pokemon. An opportunity to use it and take some massive knockouts against Christian's correct Gardevoir EX deck. As we do see both players, their fist bump, we do see the active positions of the Bidoof and the Greninja, Radiant Greninja there, and it does look like Alexander will be kicking us off with a Nest Ball.
Yeah, just some confusion there on players and lists there before we got into this game. But I can tell you, you're in for a treat. We have some cards that we have not seen ever on stream, and hopefully we'll get to see that from Alex. A free retreat pivot out. And this is actually something, if I asked you what is the highest HP, free retreat cost pivot out you could have in the format right now, that's a single prize, all the things you're looking for, would you know it?
Absolutely not, and I'm hoping you can tell me.
So I had a little look through, went through every single card in the format, and it's Cyclizar. 110 hit points. Not much else going on. It can be an all right starter if you're in a pinch, but realistically, it's in there for that free retreat out, which is huge when you look at some of these cards that are going to be in Alex's list and wanting them to be on the bench. And this is why I love watching Alex play.
Yeah, we do see the Nest Ball come down with the Arceus V instantly. Does Ultra Ball away a DTE there, which does sort of indicate Alex's hand is likely to potentially have another, as he does begin to sort trying to set up his board. Of course, going first is ideal for an Arceus deck. Does need to get an energy attachment. There's no reason why he wouldn't have one in hand if he's discarded the DTE. Does have double Arceus down. Right now, Christian would be staring down at this board, just thinking, well, it must be up against Arceus Giratina if I haven't shown any of the color of energies from Alex side. As the DT, it does get attached.
And we see the Bidoof in the active spot is the 70 hit point one. Has one of each, a 60 and a 70. I guess that's to try and play around a Sableye, taking out 2 of them in 1 hit, and can just pick and choose which one to go for whenever it needs to. We saw a similar kind of thing with Sobble, when Sobble, the 60 HP one was preferable, and then once we started seeing the bench attacking coming out, aiming for that 60 hit points, putting 70 hit point variants can be quite useful.
Yeah, and just as it passes over to Christian now, he gets a chance to really just double check what's prized. We'll begin to identify there's 3 psychic energies prized out of the 12 that he plays, so just have access to 9 at the moment. But for the time being, that potentially could be enough for Christian to kind of work with. Does need to begin setting up his board as a key priority first as well, as he just double checks the access to Curliers at the same time. Of course, his Pokemon, one of the Curliers just there in the bottom left prized. It's just going to be a pretty standard list. I think now he is playing the Sky Sealstone version to kind of get him to jump over certain prizes as well, which could come into play against the Arceus V-Star, as we do see the Irida there coming down for the water Pokemon and an item.
Yeah, we've seen this Irida in the last game we had on stream. Nice inclusion as one of the one-off supporter count that we see lots of different uses of supporters. Irida, very useful in this match because you have Radiant Greninja and Manaphy, vital cards to help with either game plan, either bench protection or increase the draw. On this occasion, you see the Manaphy taken. I think probably going to be either discarded or kept in the hand just to improve outs off of draws, because it's not going to be useful in this matchup. I guess Christian doesn't know what other options there are. There's a few Arceus builds that are very niche, that have bench attacking options, but on this occasion, not going to be an early placement onto the board.
Yeah, we do see the double routes come down as expected with the Battle VIP pass. As I already mentioned, Christian will be looking just to kind of set up his own board. It does take a little bit of time because he will be playing stage 2s to sort of get to that scenario. Does have already the Luminion V on the bench as well, which could be an easy target for Alexander if Alexander can find an Arceus V-Star energy and then could very easily Starbirth for the pieces. Just take 2 early prizes, 2 very quick prizes here as well. As Christian continues down well with an Ultra Ball, grabs the 3rd Ralts, and that's a lot of the time what you want to see.
At this stage, Gardevoir is a strong deck in this matchup if you can get going and start attacking early. And realistically, so much of the matchup is decided by Arceus at this stage. What is in this 3-card hand for Alex? The most important card you need. That Arceus V-Star comes down. Starbirth will be able to stabilize the game state for Alex. Can provide exactly what he needs going into this next turn. I'm thinking of the kind of supporter that you go for. There is things like Research, Roxanne later on, Clara later on, maybe even a Judge to try and disrupt the opponent's hand. But we'll need a switch out and an energy guaranteed here.
Yeah, the deck itself is very much the usual engine of what we see typically of Arceus right now, with this sort of Judge Path combo, playing 3 copies of of Judge and then 3 copies of the Path to the Peak, but also leans heavily into the Sharon's Care package as well. So it does play 2 Sharon's Care in his list, you know, just being able to soak damage up and then instantly pick up that damaged Pokemon and heal it and go into another attacker.
So path down, and we see the judge. This is a huge judge now because he needs to get an energy off. That will completely change the rhythm of this game. If able to get it, then that would mean an attack off.
Look, he does get the energy, but it's another DTE, it looks like. Does have trekking shoes as well, just to kind of burn through it some more. Keeps the path to the peak because he knows he's going to be up against a deck which loves to use abilities, of course. And there we go. He will be attacking it, reducing it down to 160, which isn't ideal, but for the time being, more than enough to start swinging away and initiate the prize race.
And if any damage is dealt to an Arceus V-Star without knocking it out, we have Sharon's Care in the list, which can pick it up. Sometimes people will look to attack him with a Guard of Warrior X and deal with it in 2 knockouts, but Sharon's Care is such a great way to reset damage on board and even start taking those Arceus V-Stars away to make the prize map differently, especially with that end game Galarian Moltres attacker. It could be a great way to pivot into it.
Yeah, and as Alexander is showcasing that he is playing Dark Energies now to Christian's board, Christian will be staring down eventually at Pokemon, which will be, oh my god, that's just a pass. Sorry, just to kind of confirm that it was just a retreat into the Luminion V.
That's huge.
And this is it. This is how the deck works once you're able to judge path your opponent into just nothing.
Yeah, judge and path really disrupting Christian with no Curlier on board, the Greninja taking it out as an option. The draw potential is very low for Gardevoir. There is a lot of trainer cards that can help you start building up that draw engine. But Arceus in a strong spot, and there is a V-Guard there, and another judge will be played. And this will help Alex try and find things like the Barrel, another Arceus V-Star to set up his own board, whilst also knowing that 4 cards for Christian right now, he has to find a lot in that.
Yeah, exactly. One of the crazy things is, though, with that 160 damage, without anything else to bump that up as a damage modifier, that Luminion V will be able to actually tank a hit, which is something we don't typically see when it's in the active spot and about to stare down at an attacker. As we did have a quick glance there, Christian's hand. We do just have a few cards here from
Choice Belt will do it.
Choice Belt will actually push him over the HP of that Luminion V and push him up down to just sort of 3 prizes remaining. There it is.
I think he was debating there, does he go Choice Belt or get a second Arceus V-Star and then retreat into it? And instead goes for the knockout. That's going to be 2 prizes as well as more energy in play. Knows that there's 1 prize. There's only 6 Dark Energy in the deck. So we'll get it 2 onto the bench to Arceus V, and you see another Bidoof down. And so if we can see Barrel in play, these judges are going to be so deadly for the Gardevoir list, but barely affect Arceus.
Yeah, and Christian does have that level ball. Looked like he top-decked the research as well, but I think he's just deciding now that this game is too far gone, and the winner of this game in the final round of day 1 is Alexander.
Oh, I'm loving this right now. Alexander's so creative with his deck creations. We saw, like we said, Palkia Vikavolt, a very unorthodox deck not too long ago, now playing an Arceus Galarian Moltres deck. This is beautiful.
Yeah, it's something I know you've tried.
I've tried a lot.
Combining at some stage as well, but again, sometimes it just falls down as an Arceus deck, right? We saw it a little bit earlier with Carl Peters and his Arceus Giratina. Alexander's in a great position. He knows he's got 2 more games to just see if he can set up. He will be going second, I believe, anyway. Well, it's probably more favored to go first for Christian's side of the board, so he could begin setting up as soon as possible. But that does mean he's going to be at a slight disadvantage here, but there's that game 3 that's available.
We saw this combination a little bit in the past, Arceus with Inteleon and the Galarian Moltres. We saw a bit of play from that. And let me tell you the story of how I thought Arceus and Galarian Moltres should go together. I was with Joe Bernard, everyone knows Joe,
okay.
Omnipoke Joe, and I was chatting with him about various combinations we haven't seen yet in this format. And I was saying some terrible combinations, and then I suddenly went, what about Arceus V-Star and Galarian Moltres? And Joe stopped, paused, and started thinking, and he went, do you know what, you might be onto something. And we tried so hard to find a combination that worked, and ultimately there were just other better decks in the format. And we didn't try it like how Alex has here with the Barrel engine and playing more of the Judge Path style. And I think it's working really nicely. And there's no Radiant in the deck, so one of the few decks we've seen playing no Radiant Pokemon. And Alex just opting to play more defensive Arceus build with that end game attacker of the Galarian Moltres.
Yeah, we do have now both our players set up. Christian does have a pretty good hand to begin at least getting some of those routes in play. Double VIP pass. Also having access to Fog Crystal to be able to maybe get an energy. Also to use maybe Greninja's Concealed Cards ability just to keep drawing more cards. Looks like there's a number of options that are available to him here, and it's a pretty nice looking opening hand, as we do see from Alexander's board as well. He's just started with that ideal starter, getting that Arceus V in the active, just will be looking for that DTE on his turn.
As we mentioned, this is an important game to win, so that early concession from Christian, knowing that they really need to go all 3 games here and try and make it a 2-1. Alex will be thinking now, you know, if it's starting to look a bit dicey early on, we'll be thinking, do you know what, let's go game 3. And I'm interested to see how Arceus plays into, this particular build of Arceus plays into Gardevoir going second, because you do have that Galarian Moltres to take out a Gardevoir EX. Once it's 3 prizes taken, it'll do 170 damage. With the weakness, that'll take out a Gardevoir EX. So you might even be able to get 2 of those Galarian Moltres off in a game, and that would really be able to swing it back in favor.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think Alexander's just also flashed his hand slightly there. And as we see, there's 2 DTEs currently prized, but the flash of the hand, I believe there is actually 1 of the 2 in his hand as well, so he can start at least Trinity charging on his turn, as we do see Christian finish his board set up with the 3 routes once again. Alexander will be just looking to try and set up the typical Arceus build of just having multiple Arceus out. They're big, they're bulky, it's really hard to take them out. Once they're all set up, he's just double checking what's in the hand. His options here that chooses to discard the energy, both the V-Guard and the Dark, with the Research and the Sharon's Care as well. But he has access to Power Pad. He has access to 1 more Sharon's Care somewhere in that deck. So would be able to loop it if they aren't taken in 1-hit KOs.
That was the classic cards in hand moment right there, asking to see whether the judge was the right option. You know, the hand of a Gardevoir deck at this stage is key, because if you've just got routes in play and nothing else, it can get quite dicey. So we'll see what happens, whether this the next turn is going to be pop off enough for Gardevoir to maybe take a knockout. Otherwise, we'll see a nicely loaded up and charged Arceus board state. And as we mentioned, there are Sharon's Care available to reset some damage, but realistically, Gardevoir is going to look to get to that 1-hit KO potential. With 11 energy in deck right now, that should be very easy.
Yeah, I do think Christian's, you know, taken a breath of relief, you know, just because his hands actually looks pretty good. There was a Curlier there in hand. I believe there might be a level ball as well, so instant access to 2 refinement Curliers, as we do get the Trinity charge off that powered up Arceus V on the bench with 3 Dark Energies. One of the cool things that you can do with this particular build and deck, if that 1 Arceus V is able to tank a hit, that Sharon's Care only active when a colorless Pokemon has damage counters on it. If he can pick it up, has the Moltres in hand, it comes slammed straight back down for a massive attacker as an option as well. But let's see if we can even get to that stage of the game, as we do see the first refinement of our round 9 from Christian.
Oh, and the VIP pass and judge, not particularly good ones off the refinement. We'll be able to get another level ball. Didn't play that beforehand to try and see if the Curlier would come through on that first refinement to try and get access to as much as possible. We'll play it now. Gets access to another refinement. A nice easy battle VIP pass, target in hand. May even look to do it after a judge or something like that.
Yeah, so there's, again, just a few different options here. Just contemplating whether that Cresselia is useful or not for this matchup. Does decide to bench it and plays the judge. Again, looking to try to slow down Alexander's side of the board as well. But with 1 more refinement still on Christian's side, I think he's okay with that sort of judge play.
We see this with both Mew and Arceus, 2 of the best judge path users in the format right now. Often at times when you judge them back, it can be mighty effective, because they don't have the easiest time when they've got a rough hand, especially Arceus, even more so than the Mew.
Yeah, I think there's still quite a lot of outs for Alexander's side, but of course just being able to limit some plays is a way of doing it. As we do see the Greninja come down, there's the concealed cards as well, just discarding the energy which he wants there. Does have another Curlier in hand, I believe, so we will have access to 2 more refinements as well. Or is that a Routes? That's a Routes. Oh no, it was a Curlier. My bad.
Good eyes, Alex. For your age, you've still got a pretty good eyesight.
Thank you very much. I try and stay attentive. I mean, some people actually watch the game, Mike.
Sorry, I'm just in awe of this whole game. You know, at this stage of the day, it's been a long old day for everybody. I'm sure these players are exhausted. 9 rounds of Swiss is hard work. And I do wonder what's going through Christian's mind, because he's playing against an unfamiliar deck. And you often wonder as well with players like this, have they been able to speak to a friend who's played against Alexander and sort of ask, what's in the deck? You know, what am I up against? Or might have been warned about it, because, you know, when there's a new deck about amongst the top players, everyone's going, oh, have you seen what he's playing? Have you seen what they're playing? So it can be a bit of information there.
I mean, I guess with Christian's side of the board, he's just still trying to figure out what else there could be. I mean, if he's seeing all these dark energies, could suddenly be thinking maybe there's still that Umbreon somewhere, but doesn't want to go with that action. Or
that's true, the Umbreon.
It's just, you know, got to start thinking about that Galarian Moltres is just going to be a late game attacker. Does leave an energy attached to the Manaphy in the active spot. Alexander doesn't have the V-Star, it looks like, in hand yet. Otherwise, I would assume he would have slammed it down. But we do have a Nest Ball, as he does just pick another piece of the puzzle for him to just be able to still start swinging away as soon as possible, as he does make his notes, which are currently still allowed in our format, just to kind of help players remind themselves of what's available to them in terms of resources. We know resource management is a massive thing in Pokemon, and even beyond that as well, as we do see the Arceus V come down from that Nest Ball.
Yeah, maybe that Raihan could be vital, because if you've got access to a Raihan at some point, that would be able to find you exactly what you need, which is one of the best things about the Arceus deck, if you can find exactly what you need. Oh, so the Cyclizar does come down there. I was not lying to you guys. There is a Cyclizar in this deck. I wonder if Christian's going to ask. I have a little read of that. I don't remember what it did when I played it in that pre-release or whatever it was. But Cyclizar, free retreat, 110 hit points. And unfortunately, there's no free retreaters that are single prize that have more than 110 hit points. Otherwise, I think we might see it a bit more, because it would be useful against things like Lost Box.
Yeah, as you kind of mentioned before, it's great to just have a pivot option. It'd be interesting to kind of get that insight from Alexander, given the opportunity, as we do see the Arceus V-Star and now a V-Guard Energy on the active. So we'll start again, initiating the prize race. Does have access to Starburst still, but, you know, maybe he just wants to utilize that a bit later.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to hold on to your Starbirth if you can. And at this stage, I can't see anything obvious that needs to be played. I guess maybe a Judge if you're really thinking about disruption. But with all of that Curlier and Greninja on board, I don't think it's worth it, because there's so much draw out of a Judge.
Yeah, and there's the Starbirth being played now. I think that first card was actually a boss. So I think he just wants to start trying to stifle Christian's side of the board and maybe try and target down one of those cards, which can keep allowing him to use Refinement and draw.
Yeah, and also a Sharon's Care maybe for a future turn. He thought about that, but I wonder what the other card was that was taken. And this is really where you start seeing that the beauty of these unknown decks is how the people who design them can master them. They thought through every scenario. But the advantage of doing that Starbirth early is you can get that path down and know that it's not going to affect you. So it's worth getting out of the way. If you know you're going to be playing path for the rest of the game, then why not? Just get it out of the way, find a useful card, and Path to the Peak for time.
Yeah, and that is the first prize being taken on that Curlier. So again, just trying to limit what options Christian has. Only has access to 2 refinements now on his side of the board. Of course, concealed cards currently being stopped by that Path to the Peak, as it is a rule box Pokemon. We do see the refinement here, draw 2 cards. It looks like a worker to kind of get that stadium out of action as soon as possible as well, being able to discard a stadium in play and then draw 3 cards, which again is one of those sort of one-off supporters we see in Guardi currently, and it's just another way to kind of push them forward without seeing that Path to the Peak sticking around.
Yeah, there we go, see it go down straight away. Worker draws the 3 as well. We saw it earlier on the stream being used for the draw 3 without bumping the stadium. So it is still just a good card to have when there's no stadium in play, but this is where the draw starts to come through. You can see there, Gardevoir EX was taken through some of those draws. It's going to allow the energy acceleration to begin. It's whether you can take that knockout on the Arceus V-Star at this stage. That's going to be the next question.
Yeah, it does have the Gardevoir EX in his hand, contemplating benching the additional routes as well. Has no space for like a big attacker like the Zacian V if he wanted to put the routes down right now. As we do see the second refinement come into play, a level ball and an ultra ball, has outs now, is playing the 2 of Zacian Vs as well, one currently in the prizes. Does bench the routes, which is something I prefer. I think he might likely sort of give up that mana fee potentially as well, but he's just kind of contemplating here because he does have that pivot option because of that attachment he did proactively earlier.
I guess maybe thinking about putting some damage in play with the Cresselia might be an option. I'm not quite sure the game plan here. And I'm sure Christian's trying to work out what the best angle of attack is. You know, all these little cards like the Sharon's Care. Do they play Sharon's Care? Well, they probably do, but how many do they play? Do they play 1? Do they play 2? How much can they lean into it? Have they got it in their hand? So much to think about for Christian now, and he's going to retreat into the Guard Warrior X and look to attack for 190. We did see last turn, Alex off the Starbirth took the boss, almost took the Sharon's Care, but decided to put it back and took a different card. So I'd be interested now whether he has a Sharon's Care in hand, or whether that was put back into the deck for a reason.
No, exactly. And Christian did have a quick check of the discard pile as well. And I believe was it this game, was it the turn 1 research, which had one of the Sharon's Care already. So in Christian's mind, he's probably thinking maybe it's just a one-off, meaning Alexander would need to find a way to power pad it back in without Starbirth because that's been used, as he doesn't announce the Gardevoir EX's attack and deals a 190 to the active right now. So it's on Alexander to just kind of work out what his next move is. That Guardy currently sitting pretty with 250 HP, I'd like to say, with 60 damage currently on it. So a little bit out of range for Alexander, as we do see a Nest Ball come down now, as it's his turn to kick things off for, I think, his turn 3, and is that Skwovet?
That is a Skwovet. So off the back of not getting the Sharon's Care, I think he's going to try and use a Skwovet and the Barrel together to try and find it maybe. But the thing about Guard of Warrior X in this matchup is it does damage to Arceus, which activates Sharon's Care and allows you to be able to use it, but it also can then take a hit back. And Guard of Warrior X is not able to be knocked out at this stage by Alex's deck. You might see those Dark Energy there, but it does require the prizes to be taken for the Galarian Moltres to start taking knockouts on Guard of Warrior X. So off of that draw, did they find the Sharon's Care?
Has been able to play down his hand after that Nest Dash, evolving up that bench Arceus V-Star. Trekking Shoes, contemplating whether keeping this card would be the best option, does choose to discard it, does now show off the Galarian Moltres to Christian, and Christian's thinking, okay, well, that's what I've got to deal with now. It's going to be sat in the discard pile, as Alexander will have to try and use something like the Clara to sort of come back into the game and get it back out of the discard alongside those energies.
Yeah, so now looking back at that Starbirth where the Sharon's Care was thought about being taken, they decided to put it back in and maybe took a Nest Ball or something for the Skwovet. We don't know the exact choice at that time, but that's the kind of decision that hindsight would have been an amazing choice. Guard of Warrior X doing damage, it's not the end of the world because, you know, they can play around it. They can retreat into the Arceus, which would force the Gust out of the Gardevoir deck to be able to take it. And typically we only see maybe 1 or 2 Boss's Orders in a Gardevoir. There is 2 in this list. So access to Boss's Orders is more likely compared to normal. But there is an Arceus ready to attack on the bench, which might give a turn to find that Sharon's Care.
Yeah, we do see the boss on that Curlier again, looking to just try and disrupt the setup from Christian's side of the board. And also the path to the peak to kind of stop any maybe big retaliations using Gardevoir EX's incredible ability, Psychic Embrace, to attach more energies to maybe something like a Zacian to really return KO here, as he does send up that fresh Arceus V-Star in the active spot to take the KO, and doesn't need to power up anything else as of yet. He does, of course, or has, of course, taken the DTE now from the prizes, so we'll have access to that as well for additional attackers later in the game, as we do see the Gardevoir go into the active spot here.
We see that Boss's Orders in the hand ready for Christian, so can get the knockout this turn. Would take 2 prizes, which would mean the Gardevoir would be still out of range of a Galarian Moltres because it would do 120 damage. So it would mean that it would be just out of range there. No Cleansing Glove. Not enough room in a list like this to put a Cleansing Glove in it.
Nope, not at all. Just targeting down, as you called correctly, with that boss. Trying to take the additional prizes here. Christian does and is holding multiple sort of ball searches, level balls to try and grab like routes and curliers, but with 2 already not taken down, is really kind of maybe digging for something like the Miriam to shuffle Pokemon back into the deck and draw further free cards.
Yeah, and we see the Cyclizar going straight up there. When you have a free retreat Pokemon, the easiest choice of your life is to put that one in the active.
Yep.
And that's exactly why, so it gives you options as to where you want to go. So at this stage, that Arceus knockout is huge because, yes, that first Arceus required a 2-hit knockout, but in the future, having access to a Shiny Arcana Gardevoir or a Zacian V, we'll be able to potentially take a knockout on an Arceus V-Star with a 1-hit knockout. So those 2-hit knockouts will not be frequent in this matchup. This is where Arceus really is going to struggle once Gardevoir gets a lot of energy into the discard pile.
Yeah, and we have seen both of Alexander's bosses been played so far to take out 2 Curliers, so we'll only be able to get it back with the Power Pad, as we do see the DT attached to the Cyclizar, which, as you mentioned, in the bind can draw you some cards with Turin, which only costs 1 colorless. Does have a speed attack, dealing 100 damage with 3 energies. I guess is another sort of cute utility attacker against Lost Box, because most of the Pokemon is quite low in sort of HP.
Yeah.
And with a DT attached, it's only dealing 80 damage. Does play the switch to get cards out of his hand, trying to utilize and get as much efficiency out of the barrel as much as possible. We do see the Nest Stash there. Draw 1 card, and then the barrel up to the 5 again.
Yeah, with that Cyclizar, hitting for 80 would be good into a lot of the Gardevoir attackers once they've had a lot of energy attached. So either a Zacian V if it required a lot of energy, or the Shiny Arcana Gardevoir would also be in range. And even stuff like Curlier you could attack into, leaving a single prizer in the active that can free retreat out. So interesting attacker to include. And I guess that's where the utility there would be useful down the line. So switched out, so there was no retreat earlier. So when you see at the bottom there, the retreat did not get used. So we'll look to use an escape rope now, so they can go back into the Cyclizar and find a new target other than the Gardevoir EX.
Christian sending up the Manaphy, and we do just see the gesture of Cyclizar come into the active spot, and then the retreat being used back into the Arceus. Now that Manaphy is out of the board for Christian, does now free up an additional board space for him to perhaps try and get things going that way, and still keeps Alexander in a slightly ahead position.
And leaving that 3 energy on the Gardevoir EX, yes, it can discard 2 by retreating, but then that would leave 1 on it. So that might make it hard to hit those big numbers on something like the Shiny Arcana Gardevoir or the Zacian V. So now 3 prizes remaining for Alex. We'll see what can happen in this next turn. And I'm excited to see where this goes, because, you know, we said this is going to have to be a result for both players. They need this to get into day 2. It's a win and in game. So both players very aware they need to finish it. So Alex can clearly see a route to victory, trusting his deck at this stage, where Christian is really trying to just force us to go to game 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's really difficult decisions here now. I think Christian's also got that Miriam in hand, as well as Professor's Research. Does opt for the Miriam, you know, shuffling back up to 5 Pokemon, I believe, to your deck, and then allowing you to draw 3 cards. So he just needs to reset up that board, because right now he only has, well, with Path to the Peak in play, he only has 1 draw Pokemon, 1 card that on his board that can draw cards in that refinement, because Greninja is currently locked out of the game.
Exactly, and that's where that path is more disruptive than people realize against things like Lost Box or Gardevoir. And there we go, some new Pokemon available.
Yeah.
A lot of them off of that Miriam.
Miriam straight into 3 Pokemon there, including the Shining Arcana Gardevoir, which, you know, we've seen some lists like Tord beginning to maybe utilize just a one-off. Christian here is using 2 copies in his deck, so he can use Refinement and then potentially instantly evolve it up and draw another 2 cards with that Shining Arcana ability, which again, very similar. Once during your turn, you may look at the top 2 cards of your deck and attach any number of basic energy cards you find there. Put the other cards into your hand, as we do see that come down. So the draw 4 cards from 1 line of Pokemon there is great sort of power card, as we do see 2 further routes also come down. That board is almost back to where he wants it to be, as he is about to announce another attack from the Gardevoir EX.
So as we mentioned before, if you put damage on the board into the Arceus V-Star, it can always get rid of it with a Sharon's Care. So I think Alex this turn will look to try and get the Sharon's Care, try and win a turn back, and then maybe even attack in with another Arceus V-Star. You can see the one on the bench there doesn't have much energy attached, just the one dark energy. Would need a double turbo energy on top of that to start taking damage, but could also potentially use a gust option and try and retreat that Arceus V-Star, thinking maybe it can survive on the bench. So a few different options.
Yeah, and I'm starting to sort of realize the utility of a pivot as well, because if Alexander can eventually get a Sharon's Care on that Arceus, that Cyclozar could go into the active spot, the energy stays in the hand, and then can just pivot into a Galarian Moltres, which could potentially come down. As of right now, it's not enough, because it's only 2 prizes taken from Christian's side of the board. That attack being able to deal 20 damage plus 50 for every prize card your opponent's taken would bump it up to 120, times 2 for weakness, which is 240, which is currently 10 damage short. If, however, you can find a choice belt as well, that will be one way to sort of push it over the edge. And it looks like there's a Sharon's. I don't believe I see the Galarian. Oh, the Galarian Moltres was in the discard because he discarded it with track issues, isn't he? Does have, however, the Clara for future turns, as we do see just a continual attachment to the other Arceus V-Star on the bench. Just maybe start to put more damage on. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see which line of play Alexander goes for.
And this is exactly what you mentioned earlier, that Sharon's Care allowing you to take the energy off the board into your hand for when you place that Galarian Moltres down in the future. So we'll have access to that now. And you saw the double turbo energy attachment onto the Arceus V-Star on the bench, so we'll be able to do so there. And the other amazing utility here is with that Squovert, puts the energy back into the deck so that the next Arceus V-Star attack will be able to get energy from the deck and put it back into play. So you can see the full combination of how these cards work together, and that is a exceptional turn there, setting up a new Arceus V-Star, removing damage from play, and being able to attach some of those energy put back into the deck by the Squovert.
Yeah, so just sort of playing to his outs here, Alexander, just being able to, just keep recycling his attackers and then utilizing those additional Sharon's Care that he has in his deck. Of course, I don't think I've seen the Power Pad as of yet, so has potential to keep cycling through them. Excuse the pun with the Cyclozar or something on the board. But just to be able to just keep healing up those Arceus Vs and V-Stars and just keep just dealing damage to Christian's side of the board, as we do see an Ultra Ball sort of come down, sorry.
Yeah, and I think the psychic energy count going up into the discard pile is only going to favor Christian, because then he can start taking one-hit knockouts on these Arceus V-Stars. So having a reset turn, in a way, with that Arceus V-Star did go in his favor, and 3 prizes remaining for Alexander. So just needs to take a knockout on that Gardevoir EX that we see and another Pokemon. Whereas on the other side, Christian has to take 2.
Yeah, but with no boss outs right now, it's not going to look too easy as it currently stands. But we do see the stadium bump there, that Temple of Sinnoh coming into play to stop special energies. So currently, those DTEs are only providing 1 colorless energy. So that Arceus V currently can't attack.
And I wonder if having the Arceus V on the bench was a smart idea, because maybe he could keep it down to a single prize matchup, using that Cyclozar to maybe take a knockout on a Curlier, trying to focus on just using Galarian Moltres. I wonder if that was a way to finish off this game here with so much damage on that Gardevoir EX, but it would require a few Gust Outs where there's only the 2 boss in the deck, so not as many Gust Outs here, and also recognizing Gust Outs have been used for Christian, so things could be starting to be safe on the bench for both players.
Yeah, as we do see the Cresselia move into the active spot, a great utility attacker if we start to use different damage from the Psychic Embrace onto all the Pokemon across the bench. We do see the first refinement there. That deck is starting to look super thin as it currently stands. There's a second refinement. Oh, and there we go. Just a rare candy being discarded there. 2 cards being drawn. Lots of energies. That Roxanne could come in and be quite big later as well. There's the energy attachment from the Psychic Embrace from the discard as it looks to, go across the back of his board there and start just, let's say, dumping energies onto Alexander's side of the board. Yeah,
and with this, we'll heal a little bit of damage from that Gardevoir EX, but we'll also allow him to get energy onto the Gardevoir on the bench without it leaving damage there. So potentially setting it up for future one-hit knockouts, where reaching 280 can be quite tricky if you just go straight from the Gardevoir EX ability. So we'll see where this is going to go. The Cresselia, I assume, going to attack that Skwovet. And that would be a slower route to victory for Christian, but it would take away some of that draw engine that Alexander has on board.
Well, Christian currently has a scenario where he could win in 2 turns, right? So potentially with this Cresselia play, if he takes out something like, I don't know, the barrel, maybe stop that draw engine, puts him down to 3, but with Sky Sealstone in play, if he's able to get a massive attack off against an Arceus V-Star with his Zacian V, that could be one route to victory here. So it does need to take this KO here, and then potentially could take 3 prizes on Arceus V-Star going into the next turn. Didn't pull the Zacian V, but I believe there is one either in deck or in hand, still not been discarded by any refinements.
And I don't think he's shown the Sky Seal Stone yet, so
Not as of yet.
so that would be a secret component of Christian's deck. You know, everyone plays one of the Seal Stones typically. Some people play both. I've seen it on occasion.
Yep.
The double stone. So Forest Seal Stone has been popular recently, but it's moments like this where that Sky Seal Stone can change the prize map in favor of the Gardevoir deck. Taking those final 3 prizes would be huge here, and I'm wondering what Alex has to try and do here to try and win this game.
Yeah, he does need to currently still get an energy, maybe on sort of the active to be able to attack, because currently the Temple Sinnoh is still in play and needs to be bumped for that DT to be active once again. He does trekking shoes into the path to the peak there, now reactivating those DTEs to be 2 colorless energies to be able to continue attacking, but will leave it susceptible if Christian does have a way out of that path to the peak there as well with a Zacian. Really nail-biting stuff here right now, because Alexander will be looking to try and disrupt him one more time, perhaps.
Maybe the Roxanne.
Yep, maybe the Roxanne. Maybe he's digging for that right now, as he just has to keep attacking, announcing an attack, and just sort of plow through where he can, because he's got no boss left. We know this. He's bossed 2 Curliers, but let's see what he's able to pull off.
Yeah, there's a Roxanne in there. There's also a Poker Gear. So both of those are in the deck. That would have. You see, is that a Poker Gear in hand as well? So I think that's a guarantee with the amount of cards left in deck. If it's 7 or less, can guarantee which supporter they get out. You know, 2 Poker Gear in the list allows you to find those rarer supporters that we see. You know, there's 1 of Clara, 1 of Roxanne, 1 of Raihan. There's 2 of the rest, and 3, well, 2 Sharon's Care, 2 Research, 2 Boss Orders, and 3 Judge. Unusual counts of everything, actually. But yeah, being able to find that Roxanne right now could be huge. It would disrupt the hand, force a little bit more out of Christian, but Christian's done so much thinning, has 2 Curlier in play.
Oh, there's the Poker Gear.
We'll be able to come out of this Roxanne fairly comfortably.
Yeah, he does have the 2 Curliers and still Greninja if he's able to find a Stadium out or bounce as well. You know, we saw Christian take the KO on the Skwovet, just being able to just attach the 2 Psychic Embrace energies to the active and to the bench Shining Arcana Gardevoir, just doing that nice little cheeky 60 damage, and just saving those energies in the discard pile for when he needs them, because he doesn't want to be sort of wasting the attachments.
So he goes for the Raihan here.
Chooses a different route.
Okay. Interesting. You know, we spoke about the Roxanne being in there. That was an option. But I guess trusting that the Curlier would allow them to get out of that. Taking the Pal Pad maybe here?
Yeah, lots of just trying to put himself in a position where he can maybe boss up that Gardevoir EX, basically putting Christian on a clock as well, not knowing really what Christian has in his hand, because, like I mentioned, Christian will be maybe looking to just do that big one-hit KO to tie this game up.
Okay, so might not be thinking about the Sky Seal Stone here. If there is a way to bump the Stadium, we've seen a Worker, we've seen a Temple of Sinnoh.
Yep, so just still, there's a collapsed Stadium somewhere as well, but again, that doesn't help too much unless he can get the Zacian down beforehand.
Well, he can't really do that because he's going to have too many Pokemon in play if he uses the collapsed Stadium to activate the Gardevoir EX. So I guess I'll put Station down.
Down first.
Oh,
yeah, there you go.
I'm a silly
we got
Billy.
there. We got there.
I'm a silly Billy.
Absolutely, absolutely. But no, you were right. It could have trapped him. You know, we've all been there. We'll put the collapsed Stadium down first and not allow you to play the right Pokemon down.
If it was what was needed for the Greninja to draw out, but the Curliers are there, there's definitely a way to draw to the bottom of the deck.
And still got Shining Arcana, so there's at least 6 additional cards he's going to be seeing. But I don't think that deck has got 6 cards anyway. It's just looking for those combo pieces
Is the Zacian in the discard here?
He's actually, what Alex has been able to do is attack with that Arceus V.
True.
So it has to force
I hadn't even noticed that.
Yeah.
That is brilliant there, and that's why he went for the Raihan route.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, everything here is just so unorthodox.
Actual nail biter here between our two players, because that forces the boss to have to be played by Christian's side of the board on that Arceus V-Star, as he's just kind of contemplating what he does here.
Oh, this is brilliant. I mean, this is the kind of stuff which...
Boss, there it is, boss in hand as well.
This is the kind of stuff which, at this stage of the tournament, you know, these players have to be so consistent across a day. 9 rounds of Pokemon is exhausting for these players. Exhausting for us as well. Maybe exhausting for you guys at home who are watching. And for these guys, they have to pull off their best plays in their winning game after playing 8 rounds and finishing off their 9th round well. And Alex trying every last play here, knows that game 3 could also be an option, but looking to use every available option here.
Playing to every out possible.
Play to every out.
Yeah, that's what you've just got to do.
One boss is typical, right? And he's already seen a boss being played.
Exactly that, and Christian is eyeing up that Arceus. Oh, maybe something else for the time being. Maybe he has to go a different route because he doesn't have a piece in his hand. Targets down the barrel. That play is potentially forced a different. Maybe I've missed something, but he's just looking to maybe attack with this Shining Arcana Gardevoir, and just put him down to 2 prizes as well. Oh, just passes.
Passes, and that's going to be the retreat. So if he gets the boss off of this barrel, then he'll be able to...
Draw 4. There's the boss. Boss onto the Gardevoir. And that's a game. Alexander is our winner for round 9. And will be advancing into day 2 with fantastic sort of levels of play with that Raihan there, being able to utilize the Arceus V in the active spot. Alexander will be able to take himself into day 2 with that Arceus Dark Box that we all know and love.
Yeah, the Zacian in the discard pile, Zacian in the prizes made it very hard to get that Zacian knockout at the end. So looking to disrupt by going for the barrel, hoping there was a way that it would stay in the active for a little bit longer, but you just saw there how good Alex's deck was. Arceus is hard to knock out.
Yeah, it's a big, bulky boy, or girl, potentially. But it does have that V-Guard. He's a god. There you go. But it does have that V-Guard energy as well to also try and slow things down. But, you know, it's such a inherently just powerful card. We've seen it throughout, coming in and out of the meta at different stages and different combinations. And this is just yet another one we've seen today.
Alex, I'm exhausted. It's been a long day. It's been a tiring day. These guys have fought valiantly. Alex coming through at the end there, the winning in. He's going to be going on to day 2 with a very spicy deck. One that I am definitely going to be copying and trying out a little bit, because I've been wanting to try and mold Arceus and Galarian Moltres together for so long and not been able to find that combo. And you saw the synergy with the Squovit and how that put the energy back in, allowed for the acceleration, and the barrel working wonderfully with the Judge and the Path. A very nice deck there, disruptive, aggressive, powerful in every part of the game. I think I might have found my new favorite deck.
Yeah, I mean, I've also been a player who's tried Galarian Moltres in a few different versions as well. I mean, I played Lost Moltres at a couple of cups in recent times. It's just a powerful... Yeah, I didn't even need it. Well, we saw it get discarded.
Yeah.
That was all it was useful for, even though it was hitting for weakness against Gardevoir. But it's, you know, it's just a fantastic way to maybe just target down the meta, because we've seen Mew become so prevalent in the current meta game. You know, when taking down tournaments left, right, and center, it's not even playing the Drapion, playing the Judge Path disruption combo, as well as the Galarian Moltres, to just try and maybe take a massive KO when it needs to.
It can work in Lugia quite well. You know, Galarian Moltres plus a choice belt, if you've got 2 prizes or 1 prize remaining, can take out either a Tyranitar or Lugia V-Star respectively. And so it has some utility in other games, especially where Arceus struggles to finish off, doesn't it? It doesn't quite have that high damage output that we see from a lot of the other decks in the format right now. And I guess the disruption side of it, with the barrel, we've seen that be the meat of a lot of other Arceus decks, right? Giratina a lot of the time doesn't come out in the Arceus Giratina deck. It is just that pure Arceus barrel combination. So very innovative deck there from Alex.
Yeah, that Cyclozar is always fun to kind of have and showcase as well. Not something we would have anticipated or guessed would showcase itself in one of these streamed rounds, but here we are, a free pivot. that gives you just a brilliant way of just, using some of your combos.
Get your Cyclozars. Find them in your bulk. They are good. They are the highest HP single prize free retreater right now.
You really have dug through a number of cards on
I have,
Live, haven't you?
because on PCG Live, we're not able to search by retreat cost.
Ah, okay.
So I went through every card. I know when I say every card, I went through every basic single prize card, and I looked in that bottom corner and found Cyclozar to be the best. And it's colorless, so that helps. You can fit it into other decks. I wonder how many times, hopefully we'll find out how many times the Cyclozar has been used to attack.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether it has been able to take some
80?
prizes. Like as we mentioned, it does deal sort of 80 damage or 100 if it was just had a free energy attachments manually to it. But typically the 80 damage, enough damage to take out a number of small little squishy things at this current moment in time.
Do you know what? If I could, I right now would jump over and steal this interview, but I can't. We're going to have to leave it with, I think, Ross, who has Alex ready for an interview, and hopefully he's going to ask about everything to do with that deck.
Thank you very much, Mike. Yeah, I am here with Alexander. Now, firstly, you've just gone and booked your place in day 2 of this tournament, which is pretty cool. But even cooler than that, you've just booked your invite for the World Championships this year. That feels good, right?
Yeah, of course, it was amazing.
Now, you've actually gotten your invite with not that many tournaments this year. Can you just talk us through how you got your invite with not really playing that many events?
Yeah, so basically, this year I had my major exams in Poland, which are a really big deal. And because of the one tournament was in Warsaw, I could attend it with I could attend it. So I had a really good placement there. It was top 8. I started playing locals because locals are locals. Got 112 points from there, and now I got my invite because I got at least 128.
I mean, that is a fantastic story. So you take your regional in your home country over there in Warsaw, play a few locals, and then you're like, hang on a second, I'm close enough, just playing this one, and you are gold. And obviously, we talked to you in Warsaw. You were one of the first players we actually highlighted on these streams. What was that like, kind of being a part of the stream at your first event of the season?
It was really nice. The Gregan and Connor, shout out to them. They were amazing support and great to talk to. And also Gregan told me that he wanted to put me on the stream in top 8, but he said, let's put Alex on the stream, and they put Alex Szymanski, not me.
Well, we got you on stream today, and we got you winning in today too, and your invite, so hopefully that makes up for it a little bit. So let's go from the big picture down to the little picture. Let's talk about your deck a little bit. Mike is obsessed with the Cyclozar that is in your deck, and I love that card. I played that at a pre-release. It did me good. I've been telling people it's not good in standard format. Tell me I'm wrong.
The Cyclozar or my deck?
The Cyclozar.
Cyclozar is basically there because of the free retreat. It's the best free retreater I could find in the deck. Weird thing is that I often really attack with him. The second attack for 100 is usually 80 damage. It's really good because it's one prizer. And I just put it in a deck to retreat for Moltres.
And, well, that's the thing, right? Your deck is a weird deck. Yep. It's kind of straightforward Arceus, almost, but then you've got Moltres, you've got the Cyclozar there. How did you arrive at this deck? What was it about this deck that, well, made you choose it?
So, basically, I saw a top 16 list at Malmo, and he was playing Hammers, like straight Arceus with Hammers and no Moltres. So I decided, let's throw out the Hammers because they are not consistent. Let's add Moltres to get a better Mew matchup. And I played with it a bit and thought, like, I really need free retreater in this deck. That's why I put in Cyclozar and got some Poke Gears and Trekking Shoes for consistency. So it's basically all consistent with Moltres.
I mean, it seemed to work pretty gosh darn nicely. So heading into day 2, are there any decks you're worried about?
I'm worried about, I wouldn't say Lost Box, but it's like a 50-50. And everything is fine. Like I just get I go consistent, and they break because I judge path.
Well, I love that attitude. I love that you're in day 2. I love that you got your Worlds invite. Congratulations. And to you lovely ladies and gentlemen at home, we are almost done for the day with the stream. So we are going to sign off in a moment. But first, we've got a nice special message from the folks at Limitless.